So in my opinion, this is my most important video so far. I actually should have posted this up before I showed that broccoli puree. I'm going to show you how I achieve that bright green color and how to properly cook vegetables. I got a pot of boiling water. It's boiling heavily, and you'll notice something interesting when I add salt to it. I'm going to use this boxed kosher salt. I just like using this stuff because I'm not trying to plug a brand or anything, but I just like the ability to perceive the amount of salt I'm using in my fingers, and it's a slightly coarser grained salt. So I have this pretty much down to a science. I have to do a 10 count in this pot of water because I want it to be as salty as ocean water pretty much. So 10 1000, 9 1000, and so forth. Now it's going to be really salty, and I encourage you to taste it just a tiny bit. It's not going to kill you. An interesting thing happens as soon as I add the salt, the water stops boiling. Now, salt does a couple things chemically to water. For one, the reason it stops boiling is it actually increases the boiling point by about 6 or 7 degrees, but at the same time, it's a pretty indiscriminate amount of temperature when you're talking about 200 degrees. Adding 6 degrees isn't going to prevent it from boiling for much longer, but it also raises the heat capacity for the water, or its ability to hold on to heat. So I'm going to add Brussels sprouts. I just cut these in half. These cook really quickly. So two things that kill green color in vegetables is long cooking periods and acidity. So I want to cook these as quickly as possible, which is why it's important to have heavily boiling water and also such a large pot for a small amount of vegetables that I'm cooking. Now, these are literally going to take about 30 seconds total, and you can pick these up however you want to afterwards. Now when I go shopping, and I'll grab a variety of vegetables, and I do this with all of them, and then keep them in Tupperware, Ziploc containers, what have you, and it just makes cooking a lot more efficient. And I'll just basically spend a couple hours on one day and prepare all the foods that I buy at the store. So with these, you can taste them, and I would encourage you to do that initially. But what I do is I just take my fingernail, it's still a bit hard, and if it can pierce through the core of the Brussels sprout, then it's ready. These got about 10 or 15 more seconds. Now that they're done cooking, I'm going to transfer them to ice water. That stops the cooking process and locks in the bright green color. Now the reason that vegetables are brighter green after you cook them, well, after you cook them properly, is because the chlorophyll, which is the pigment that's responsible for the color, is trapped in pockets of gas in cell walls, so it's not as vibrant. Now when you stick the vegetables in the water, that gas escapes from the vegetable and produces a super bright green color. So the color's always there, you're just letting it show. Now the second vegetable I put in there are green beans. These, I prefer to cook them only for like a minute. If you want tender green beans, they'll probably take 4 or 5 minutes, but I prefer to keep the vitamins locked in and have a crunchier vegetable. I would actually prefer to be able to eat these raw, which you can eat them raw by all means, but I just think they're more digestible if they're slightly cooked and a little bit more presentable. Now in the restaurant we have pans with holes in them, and we do these in a larger format, larger size blanching, so it just makes more sense for us to have large pans. And we'll set a pan with holes inside of a larger pan with no holes and just pour the vegetables into there. The ice will be trapped in between the two pans. My words are kind of jumbled on that phrase, but in other words, it's easier to retrieve the vegetables after you cook them. But at home, I don't have any need for those pans other than for blanching vegetables, and they're too large for me to store, so I just fish them out of this ice bath. Can't see my beans are about where I want them. Now, other than the fact that it helps keep the water out of boil, salting the water also helps to season the vegetable. I do this all the time. Well, at least when I'm eating food that other people cook. You can perceive a salty flavor when people don't properly salt their blanching water and then salt their food at the end and try to make up for it, because you taste that salt on the surface of the vegetable. Now when you have salted water that you blanch in, yeah, it's salty to start out with, but you're putting it in neutral ice water, which is going to rinse off the extra salt. But what it does is it allows the salt to permeate throughout the vegetable, so through the entire vegetable there's a pleasant salt taste. And when I pick these up, it's just a matter of lightly seasoning them. The third vegetable I did are baby carrots, and in a restaurant we wouldn't do this because it would mess with the color a little bit, but I'm cooking at home, so I really don't give a shit. As long as it tastes good. Now these, just like the green beans, I only blanch for about a minute. This is also a handy tool. We call it a spider. You can use a strainer or a sieve. Whatever you have that allows you to retrieve the vegetables out and transfer them in the ice bath easily. With this, I only need to make 2 or 3 passes into my pot to get my vegetables out, rather than trying to pick them out with tongs or whatever else normal people use.